Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one-size-fits-all protocols, just real answers, deep-rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now on to our show. And good morning, Sammie.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm
Absolutely.
really excited to dive into this topic of birth, postpartum, pregnancy, all of the things around motherhood.
hmm
And I know that you're a wealth of knowledge on sharing all this. So she is a functional nutritionist as well as a birth doula. And I love how you combine like nutrition, fitness, and birth support to really help women feel aligned, connected, and not just during pregnancy, but in every part of their motherhood journey. So I'd love for you to give us a little bit more information on who Sammie is, but also how you got into this line of work.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I have been in the health and fitness field for 18 years. I started off as a trainer and then dove into nutrition. I owned a gym for a while. And I became pregnant. And when I got pregnant, I feel like everything I learned up until that point was now no longer applicable to my body and what I was going through. I felt very alone. I went to my OB, but just understanding different scopes, they weren't prepared to be able to help me with my, how to continue exercising safely. The nutritional recommendations were very outdated, and they even admitted that. And so there was just this huge gap in support. And I also feel as though, owning a gym and talking to women every day who had children, this was the time in their life when things shifted down a negative path or maybe a more unhealthy path. They felt like, I had so many conversations with women who were like, I was really fit and really healthy up until I had kids.
Yeah.
And then it was life got in the way, or I let myself go, or I just felt like I couldn't get back on track. And it was such a kind of doom and gloom type of situation. And I didn't want that to be what I experienced. I also didn't want that to be what anybody else experienced. So I dove into um, prenatal health. I dove into prenatal fitness and prenatal nutrition and learned a wealth of knowledge and applied it to myself, but then was also able to help apply it to other women that I was working with who became pregnant around similar time that I did. And I will tell you that what I experienced was that the better I took care of myself during pregnancy, it not only prepared me for a better birthing experience, but it also helped to support me into my postpartum when like the body is at its most delicate, its most sensitive, and when healing and recovery, rather than trying to um, rush myself back into being fit, which I'm here to admit, I still naively did that. I was very much like, I'm going to bounce back. It's going to be great. It's going to be easy. I'm a trainer. And I was humbled very quickly in motherhood on it taking time.
Oh, yes.
Oh yes. So through a lot of learning and through a lot of trial and error, I was able to support myself through that postpartum period, which is not 6 weeks, it is 2 years, which a lot of women don't understand and don't know and aren't told. And so yeah, my goal is to really help bridge that gap between, you know, a lot of women take steps to improve their health for fertility or to try to conceive. And then when they finally do conceive, and it's such a beautiful, wonderful thing, a lot of that then goes out the window because they've done the thing, they are pregnant now. And then again, there's not a lot of support between getting pregnant and what happens after. So my goal is to help to educate and also support women through all the changes that are happening during your pregnancy, not just the physical changes, but the emotional changes, the hormone changes, the mental changes, what's important to you shifts. And so being able to support them through that to have a better pregnancy and birthing experience, but also to lead into a more peaceful prepared motherhood experience is also been, it's just been amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think this is also important because you're totally right, right? There's so much about how to get pregnant, right? And unfortunately nowadays more and more that's becoming more of a topic because of
Yep.
issues with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You, I think you can't really prepare for it unless
Yeah.
you have lived the hormone changes that
Oh,
are
yeah.
first trimester, like second trimester, like because you think that you're going to be the same and physiologically, biologically, you change.
Mhm.
And there's so much identity with women on resisting that change, right?
Yeah.
Or not understanding it and feeling like, oh my gosh, especially if you had a hard time getting pregnant or health issues, it's like, is this gonna like mess me up? Am I hurting my baby? Am I hurting myself? Right? There's so much unknown, especially as a first
Hmm.
time mom too. And there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. So having that
Hmm.
support, understanding not only emotionally, but physiologically, like why these things are happening too, makes you feel like you're not going crazy for one.
Yeah.
That all of this for the most part is biologically normal. It's just maybe uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And but I think a misconception that I'd love to jam on a little bit more too is your postpartum experience starts in preconception, right?
Hmm.
And, there's only so much that your body can or is willing to do during pregnancy, not just biologically, but just physically, you're tired. And to prepare yourself for a better postpartum experience because that is such a delicate, vulnerable time.
Yeah,
And there's a lot, I want to acknowledge that you can still do everything right and perfect, and postpartum can still throw curveballs at you.
absolutely.
I do want to acknowledge that because that is
Yeah.
reality. But at least looking back, being like, I did everything I could, gives a lot of peace too. So talk me through a little bit on, actually, we'll kind of go back. I'm going to skip the fertility for right now, but when you're in pregnancy, what are you kind of guiding women through in order to have
Yeah.
a little bit of that better postpartum experience?
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. So it's a combination of physical preparedness, but also mental and emotional preparedness. So a lot of nervous system stuff. So it starts with I dive into different areas nutritionally, and this is hard, especially during that first trimester, where a lot of women are experiencing massive amounts of nausea and food aversions and things like that. And again, that's different for every pregnancy and every person. But this is where, you know, we kind of battle with our desire to control or the feeling like we have no control. And really, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? And so, just focusing on there are going to be things that are out of your control. There's things that could happen in pregnancy, that could happen postpartum, that are outside of our realm to be able to influence. But then there is also a lot that you can do. And so, I really try to help focus on rather than worrying and diving down the rabbit holes of what we can't control, let's shift and focus on what we can control. And so from a nutrition standpoint, it's really about bringing in nutrients wherever and however we can, which gets creative when we're having food aversions and we're nauseous in that first trimester. And so I'm like, listen, if you got to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I'd rather have you eat something than not. Now, if we can find ways to get in some more whole foods, if we can find ways to get in some more nutrient dense foods, and I just mean the foods that have a little bit more vitamin and mineral content, a little bit more whole foods, that can be massively helpful for you and for baby. Same thing when it comes to exercise, that shift, that mental shift of why are you exercising? Right? What's the purpose? Exercise is such a beautiful tool that can be used in any season of life, but it might need to shift on why we're doing it, right? Especially if you're talking to an individual who is very used to being fit. And so now, they're used to pushing themselves hard. They're used to feeling a certain way or getting something out of a workout, right? And so we have to kind of work on shifting what's the purpose. I think a lot of individuals, like you said, especially if they've taken a long time to try to conceive, they're very fearful that anything they do is going to harm baby or harm themselves. And
Absolutely.
so having the conversations of your 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 body's actually meant to continue to move and to function as you have been. I've had ladies who've run up until the day that they have
Yeah.
given birth or done CrossFit. Now, every pregnancy is different. Of course, I want you to listen to your medical provider. I'm like, if there is something that is unsafe and we need to be hesitant, absolutely. But especially in the beginning, exercise can be a way to really help even combat some of that nausea that sometimes you experience. And so in the beginning, I kind of like I like to kind of perceive it again because I think this is absorbable. I think all the questions and all the overwhelm, especially being pregnant, let's just say for the first time that you have, it can really just bog you down. So I try to kind of say, all right, first trimester, we're preparing for second, we're preparing for third, we're preparing for fourth, which fourth being postpartum. So in that first trimester, it is a lot of what you can do can stay the same. We can still exercise, we can still feel good. Like not a lot might be shifting besides maybe those food aversions and things. So the primary focus there is really to help set up nutrition how it should be and kind of making some changes as nausea increases and decreases. We also set up a birth plan. So as a doula, a traditional doula, which I'm a little bit different because I pull in the nutrition and the exercise and the like functional piece, but a traditional doula is there to support and help you prepare physically and emotionally for your birth. So they can help provide that knowledge on what birth can look like, especially as a new pregnant mom that can be so just fearful, right? And you don't get all of the information you crave when you go to a doctor's appointment. And that's for a multitude of reasons, but this is where the doula can help bridge that gap is they can sit with you and they can go through a birth plan. How do you want your birth to look? Perfect world, perfect experience. What do you want? Okay, now let's chat through what are some of the other things that could happen because again, it is important to prepare that we don't have full control. We definitely have a lot of power and autonomy in our births. We can have that, but also there are some things that could happen. So let's talk about the potential things that could happen and help to start to prepare mentally for those so that the first time you're hearing the word C-section or the first time you're hearing the word epidural or the first time you're hearing emergency or anything isn't while you're in labor. So that's a thing that we do in the beginning, normally during that first trimester. And then as we move into the second trimester, we're preparing for more of what the third will look like, how the body starts to change a little bit more. You start to maybe have some more physical limitations. We're starting to prepare for birth. So exercise again can shift into, all right, now some of the movements that we're doing, these are the movements that we're going to see in our different laboring positions. These are the things that are going to help pull baby down. These are the things that are going to help, protect your core and your pelvic floor while going through this process. And then from a nutritional standpoint as well, kind of like you said, what you even do before you get pregnant will impact postpartum. But now that normally in the second trimester, everyone's different. But normally in that second trimester, if the food aversions have subsided a little bit, that nausea's gone away a little bit, your energy's back a little bit, that's where we can start to pull in a little bit more of the nutrients, a little bit more of that exercise and things to help prepare for a better birth.
Yeah, I love all of those things. And, it's multifaceted. And as you said,
Mhm.
everybody is different. And it's like meeting yourself where you're at. I can tell you from working with a lot of fertility clients, such as, the women you work with, especially women that are more type A, used to kind of, it's very hard to realize there is so much out of our control and not
Yeah.
worry. I mean, it's so easy to be like, oh, don't worry about it, but you do, right? Like,
Yeah.
know, is baby getting enough nutrients? Am I getting enough nutrients? And it can be such a fine line. And it's like, you do the best you can with what the information you have, but
Yeah.
definitely like doing all this also beforehand, like understanding what a protein is and how that stabilizes our body, understanding nervous system. You mentioned just for a hot second here saved me during,
Yeah.
that pregnancy postpartum experience because it gets harder in pregnancy to focus on all of that. But those things are just so important.
Yeah. Yeah. That nervous system is really a big, um, and all of those, it's funny because in the birthing experience, oxytocin is, as you know, is like the leading hormone, right? And oxytocin is also known as your love hormone. So it's tied to peace, it's tied to calm, it's tied to love and connection. But like think about, again, if you are that type A, or this is your first pregnancy, or like you're just a worry wart about things, that is in direct conflict with what the body is trying to produce to help create a smooth labor process. And so we start to practice just like trying to get stronger biceps and doing bicep curls. We kind of train the nervous system, and we start that in the very beginning of working together. And to your point, I work with a lot of fertility as well. So I'm learning about these women and what their personality types are well before they're getting pregnant for the majority of them. And so understanding how they function, understanding how to speak to them, understanding where their worries are, and really meeting them there and holding space for some of it, because some of it is out of our control. And like you said, you can't just say, don't worry about it. But what we can do is we can at least help the body feel safe. We can help by focusing on the things that we do have power over. We can help by kind of mentally preparing for some of the unknowns and some of the what ifs. We can talk through that stuff. So then that way it's not so scary. It's not just stuck up here, just continuing to kind of spiral, but be able to kind of get it out and talk through that is massively helpful. To have somebody your nervous system needs to get trained. So if you are stuck in that fight or flight, if you are stuck in that high kind of chronic stress, we've got to train it to be able to go into a more restful state. We've got to train it to be able to create some more calm and peace. But in doing so, that in and of itself can actually help you have a better birthing experience, because you're going to be able to release so much more oxytocin, and it's not going to have to compete with that adrenaline. And just if I can get on a soapbox a little bit, I think this is part of what makes the body, a female body, so massively amazing, is understanding the connection between birth, or procreation and safety, right? So just a little, I found this super exciting on oxytocin and adrenaline. They compete for the same sites. So you can't necessarily experience both at the same time. Your body's always going to kind of choose adrenaline. And so that is safety. That's a survival mechanism, because think of like 1,000 years ago, if a woman was giving birth in the middle of the wilderness and a bear came along to try to attack her, adrenaline takes off. It suppresses that oxytocin so she can get up and go get into a safe place. Once she feels safe, that oxytocin can then release again. And I think that's such a beautiful design. I think today we live in a world where we don't have bears coming to attack us, but a lot of our thoughts and a lot of our worries can feel like that to our body. And that's what can then uptick that adrenaline, which can stall labor or just make things harder throughout that late term pregnancy. So learning this stuff, I have found that every one of the moms that I've worked with, once they understand this, they can do such a better job self-regulating to be able to say, okay, I know I'm freaking out about this one thought, this one worry. I need to remind myself, it's not a bear. I'm safe. It's okay. And just taking the 10 seconds to do that, it's amazing the physiological change that can happen in the body.
Oh, absolutely. And to take that a step further, your baby also is impacted by your nervous system. And I think people, there's more and more studies and talk about, our gut microbiome gets passed to our kids, right? That's a huge thing that we, both probably work on with fertility clients, but it's also like we forget that our nervous system, and there's actually some interesting studies coming out too on what you deal with during pregnancy. The baby starts inheriting those kind of patterns. And sometimes it's really interesting too on I do bioresonance scanning, and on those bioresonance scan, we can see generational patterns and we can see traumas and we can see certain things. And there's a lot that it's like, no, I don't know when that could have happened. I'm like, in the womb, how was your mom's pregnancy? What was going on during her pregnancy? And sometimes that creates these really big aha moments for people. And that's not something people really talk about because it's a little more, I don't like to use the word woo, but it's like that is at our essence how our body develops.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit again, since these are new studies and these are new things, I think sometimes individuals, if we haven't known about this, I think this goes back to where some of the things that my mom would say were family traits or were genetic
Yep.
were actually not genetic, but like you said, they were passed down through the generations through lifestyle behaviors and things.
Yep.
And so I think that can get confusing. I'm like, well, if this is something that my grandma, how she lived her life while she was pregnant with my mom and then raised her, and that impacted then how she treated her body while she was
Yep.
pregnant with me, and so on and so forth. Like, when does it become genetic and when is it more of a lifestyle thing? But I think that's a beautiful thing in the sense of oftentimes we feel like genetics is something that's out of our control. I think
Yes.
we're finding that more and more. It's stuff like this. It's actually circumstances like this where it's generational, but we can break the cycle. Things can shift. You do have the power to, like, even if you were predisposed to something because of, what happened to you while you were in your mother's womb, you have the ability to learn from that and change that. So then that way that's not getting passed down to the next generation. And so I think that that's really awesome because I've talked to so many women, and I'm sure you do too, that they just feel like nothing's in their control. I mean, how many women have you talked to from a fertility standpoint, not to get on that are like, we have unexplained infertility?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what they get left with. It's just, we don't know why,
Hmm.
but this is your only option, is to go through IVF. And
Oh.
and it's such a defeating place to be, where you feel like you don't have any power over it, but you do, which is great.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And, the fertility, I mean, this could be 2 hours conversation on and of itself. Like there are some genetic components that, yes, may or may not be out of control. There was actually somebody that I was just kind of inadvertently talking to who like absorbed her twin in the womb. And so
Mhm.
had this like rare genetic issue. So she had like
Yeah.
miscarriages and 4 IVF failed. So it
Wow.
was like, whoa. And then they didn't figure out like what the problem. So yes, there's stuff like that.
Holy moly. Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's there's a physiological component, right? You can talk about, detoxification pathways, heavy metals, inflammatory issues, hormone issues, yes. Um, but then like even with bioresonance, why I kind of took that a step deeper, it was like we can learn how to quotation de-stress and maybe meditate, but it's like, can we go even deeper in understanding deep emotional patterns that are holding our body back? And that's where people don't realize because they don't think they can do anything about it.
Hmm.
And it's like, when we bring awareness, that's one thing. For me, working with energy and working with frequency, that's how we kind of move through different generational inherited patterns, both on a physiological level as well as an emotional level. Um, but it's like there are so many things that are in our control. We just have to
Hmm.
maybe learn a different technique. It's not just
Yeah.
like I'm going to meditate my way,
Yeah.
out of this. Not I'm very open to meditation. It's just, there are different things that we might need to do to help your body remember that it is safe, that,
Yeah.
it's okay to procreate. Procreation is not your body's main priority, right? It wants to keep you safe first.
Yeah.
And
Survival. It's always going to choose survival. And I think sometimes women can even get overwhelmed talking about, like, they feel like they need to be at our level to make changes, to understand things. And they don't. A lot of this can be very simple. A lot of this can be very much daily practices that you bring in. I think when we start to get into the nervous system, when we start to get into like the emotional side of things, um, it's not as simple as just checking off the box, right? Of like putting the protein on the plate and because you can put the protein on your plate, but is your body actually breaking down the protein because you're able to get into a peaceful, calmful state before you eat? Or is it stuck in that fight or flight? So then you're actually not breaking down. So there is this added layer of intentionality, not just doing the task, but why am I doing this? And am I being present while doing this? And so really, in this world that we live in, one of the big steps I've taken with a lot of clients to keep it simple is just, I need you to slow down and zoom in. And it's that, like, we live such a fast-paced life.
yes.
Our nervous system isn't designed for that. We are designed to be bored. We are designed, to like work and then stop and then, and so just understanding again how we are genetically made and that we live in a time that isn't super aligned with how we were made. And so we're going to have to pull in a little bit more intentionality than our ancestors did to creating some more peace, creating some more calm, slowing things down, staying present in what we're doing in simple tasks like eating food or moving your body. But if you can, if you can lead yourself with love and grace, and if you can be willing to see it not as a project, because you're not a project, but as like, this is a process. This is something you're going to continue to refine forever. And anything you do, what you do in your fertility season to help you, to help the body feel safe enough that it can get pregnant is going to serve a more peaceful pregnancy itself, right? And then that's going to serve into a more peaceful motherhood experience. Because that's also where, if you've got a mom who's like, go, 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 stress, stress, stress all the time, what does that do? Not just when you're in the room, but to that 2-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 12-year-old. And so that's where I see the beauty of what we do today is paying it forward, or can pay it forward to our future self. And so that, I think, can make it so even if we're just focused on today and putting the food on our plate and taking a few deep breaths before we eat, moving our body with intention and thankfulness, that's going to serve me in 5 years, in 10 years. And then that even goes further down the line. I just had a conversation with an individual on perimenopause, and I'm like, great. Like, think about everything. The beautiful thing is what we do to help you get pregnant, to help serve you during pregnancy, to help you recover postpartum, are also the things we're going to do to help prepare for that next season of life that every woman is going to go through.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yes. We could have a 2-hour conversation on perimenopause.
And just that. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a 3-part question. It's the same
Okay.
question, but if you could give one little bit of advice for somebody that is A, in the depths of a fertility journey, B, pregnant, just going through navigating, we'll say first time pregnancy, but it could be either, just, um, and 3, navigating a little words of advice for somebody that's wanting to navigate a more peaceful postpartum experience.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. So in the fertility, I think the big, as simple as it sounds, it is, where can you create some more peace physically and mentally? Where can we go? Where can we go from that survival, that fight or flight, into a more peaceful? So if that means from a nutritional standpoint, you're feeding yourself foods that don't inflame you, that don't make you feel like garbage. If that's from a standpoint of you're not doing workouts that are, crushing you into the ground, if that's from the standpoint of you're managing your stressors a little bit differently and trying to protect your peace, that's such a huge influence. Because like we've both said, your body will always choose survival. So I think that's the biggest overarching thing, controllable thing in fertility issues, is the body's stuck in a state of survival, and we need to get it into a state of peace. So then that way it can flourish, and that way it can hold on to nutrients. And then that's going to give you that much of a better opportunity to get pregnant. If you are a first time pregnancy experience, I think a big thing is I don't know what's happening to my body. And so I think it's leading yourself with curiosity, and being willing to ask questions. I think so, and I would say from like a personal experience, I knew more than most going into my pregnancy. My mom was an L&D nurse, and so I knew more than most, but I still didn't know hardly anything. And I felt as though I was waiting for people to tell me. So I felt like stupid for asking questions, or like I was bothering somebody, or like I should know. You shouldn't know. You've never done this before. So ask all the questions. Ask them a million times. If something doesn't make sense to you, if you have a provider, they have a nurse on call all the time. Ask them things. If you're somebody who knows you have a lot of questions and you go down the Google rabbit hole and it kind of makes you spiral, get additional support. Like, have someone there, whether it's someone who's had several births recently and can walk you through even their experiences, or a professional, a doula, someone who can help you. Like the it's so massively helpful to have somebody be able to walk you through things and answer those questions that are popping up. I think sometimes we expect ourselves to know that stuff, but we aren't. And then in postpartum, there is this identity shift, especially in that first one, where your body has not been solely your own for the past 9, 10 months. It's still not going to feel like your own for a while. You are in a massively depleted state. Um, so, people don't like this. Um, you need to give yourself a massive amount of grace and patience. This is postpartum is 2 years. And I would say it's 2 years if you're doing the things that are helpful. It can be longer than that if you're not. And
Yeah.
so to really meet yourself with grace, to meet yourself with patience, to be so thankful for what your body just went through. It was such a huge thing. And just to take all the time, don't and everyone's postpartum experience differently, but I tell a lot of my moms, your body can only heal when you're sleeping really well. So think about how many months it takes for you to sleep really well postpartum. For me, it was a year. I had a real sick kid the first year. So I didn't get a full night's worth of sleep for 12 months. So the healing starts when I start sleeping throughout the night, not when I'm getting 2 hours of broken sleep. Body can't heal, body can survive. That's a beautiful thing. But for it to actually start to heal. And so I just think reminding women that it does take time, because we're on such a, like, I think society and culture is like, get back to work, get back to looking normal, get back to like doing all the things. And I would say don't do that.
That's the hardest thing is
Yeah.
to meet yourself with grace because you hear it all day long. You're like, yeah, 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 I know. But I want to drop those 30 pounds. I want to, go back to feeling normal or go back to doing the things that I used to do. And it's like that identity shift creates such conflict. Yeah, it's hard. I know. I
Yeah.
felt it too. It's like, but as a
Hmm.
society, it's like we're expected to just literally grow a human, not feel your best. Postpartum, truthfully, even if you have the perfect, you still don't feel your best,
No.
but to
Yeah.
act like it's all fine and go back to our lives the same way a man would
Hmm.
and just be expected to perform the same. And that's just not how it works. And then there's frustration because you're like,
Yes.
I don't feel my best.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I know I didn't sleep a full night for 13 months either. So,
Yeah. And
like,
I will say, and I don't know if this is potentially like, a generational thing, but I think that our generation is talking more about this. We're talking more about like what the truth is, what postpartum really looks like. So I do
oh,
think that's massively beneficial. I do think I know that like at least in my family, it wasn't talked about.
yeah.
So there was no knowledge on like how this is supposed to go. It was just, yeah, you just went back and went into life again. And there was no talking through the difficulties and how you feel and what's going on behind the scenes. And so I think we unknowingly created this like pressure
Mhm.
in ourselves. And so we feel broken, or we feel like something's wrong with us if it's taking time.
Yep, totally.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Supposed to.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, social media can be beautiful to bring awareness, to bring knowledge, but it can also make you feel like you're behind always.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and that's a
Yeah.
really delicate place to be in, especially when you feel like there isn't much more capacity you can do to even quotation get ahead, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're all on our own speed, and that speed tends to be slower than most of us want it to,
And the world that we live in. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
But I love these tips and I think they're massively important for people to hear. So if people wanted to learn a little bit more about what you do, the maybe doula experience, if they're interested in learning more about that, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So you can connect with me on social media. It's Sammie, Sammie.Terbrack. And I post a lot about everything that I do. And then you can always email me and I can give you some information. I live in Michigan, so I do in-person doula work here. But I have actually had a couple clients who live in different states who I have helped with the fertility. And so we've done a virtual doula option where I'm able to support them throughout their pregnancies. I might not be there in person on the day of, but what's beautiful is I can help prepare their partner. I can help prepare their sister or their best friend or whoever it is to actually do the physical support the day of, while being able to provide all of the other support throughout the pregnancy and postpartum. And in my opinion, that is really the beautiful missing piece, is someone to be able to hold your hand, even if it's virtually, hold space for you, help to calm the nerves, help to educate you, and prepare you, help you to know that you have a voice. And so, yeah, if anyone is local or even abroad somewhere else and is looking for a little support or knowledge there, I'd love to help.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely make sure to put your links and email down in the show notes so that you guys can connect with Sammie. And I really appreciate you being here. If you guys found this helpful, definitely reach out to Sammie, reach out to me. We'd love to hear, or send it to somebody that might need to hear a little bit of this message as well. But thank you, listeners, for being here. Thank you, Sammie, so much for your time.
Thank you.
See you guys on the next show.
Thanks so much.